You guys coming out on the Friday night, whether it's 6 p.m. like myself and Elena in Los Angeles, or 2 a.m. for Zane, our presenter, or wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining. I'll introduce myself first and then hand it off to our team here. I'm Matt, and the program director. I've done this program for 5 years since it first started. And I do a lot of things outside of this, but one of my jobs is teaching in Los Angeles. Last year, I taught world history junior high school, and my one statement I like to say before I hand it off to Zane is when I taught last year my 200 students at the end of the year after a full school year, I questioned, how much of an impact did I have on my students? Will they remember me, these 12-year-olds, when they go off to college or whatnot? And I questioned that, and I still do. When I did Global English Camp for the first time in 2015, I was also skeptical of that. But after the very first week, 5 days with my students, on the last day, I did not question that. I knew I had an impact, whether it's tangibly through watching their speeches and their transformation of their week, or mentoring them on finding their life mission. It was truly special, truly fulfilling, truly rewarding, and you get to do that 4 times over the summer with different students, and that's why I've kept coming back. So without further ado, I'll introduce Elena for a quick introduction, then we'll hand it off to Zane.
Hi everyone, I'm Elena and I've been with Come On Out Japan for the past 2 years. I kind of fell into the program. I didn't realize that English teaching was going to become one of my own life missions and life passions, which after the whirlwind of the 2 months in Japan and meeting everyone in this program, I realized that teaching, especially teaching in this type of a community, was a dream of an experience, and I have been a part of Come On Out since.
Okay, thank you both. So, hi everyone, I'm Zane. As Matt mentioned, I'm from London, so it's 2 a.m. if you can tell by the black lights. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen now, and you should see the presentation. Okay, can you all see the presentation? Great, let me just pull up chat myself, and there we go. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to the info session for the Global English Camp 2021 Summer Internship Program. Thank you for your interest and coming to these Zoom sessions. We'd usually have these in person, but of course, with the situation, we can't at the moment. Before we kind of go into the main presentation, I'd really like to encourage you to sign up to the newsletter. So right here, first slide. It's the best way to keep up to date with all of the information that we have. So this will be any seminars that we might have, blog posts that we put up onto the site, offers on TEFL certificates, and especially COVID updates as well. So I'll talk about that in just a moment. Everything will be uploaded online. So this session is being recorded, and we'll also have a few other things online. I'm just gonna inundate everyone with a ton of links. Here you go. Feel free to click those later. You don't need to look at them right now, but these are some of the key things. So information on the English Camp site, the application link, the FAQ, and the newsletter. So feel free to kind of copy and paste those for the side while we do the presentation. So I'll go into the main part of the session now. And first, I'd like to talk kind of about the situation regarding COVID. So we are regularly checking for updates on the situation. And in general, we'll be following the Tokyo Olympics protocols. So if the Olympics will not be running in 2021, you can expect Global English Camp not to run as well. If it does decide to run, then chances are English Camp will also run. It's not a guarantee one-to-one, but if you keep an eye on the Olympics, you'll keep an eye on more or less what we're doing as well. On the same note, if the program is not held in 2021, then there will not be a remote version. So this is something that people have asked, if it will turn into a remote camp. That is not the case. We don't have the infrastructure ready for that for this coming summer. If your application is successful, then you may defer your internship anytime before you book your flights. So this might be if you feel unsafe due to COVID, if you just had something else that suddenly come up, maybe another internship, or maybe you suddenly applied for a job and they decided, okay, we want you all of a sudden right now. Then you may defer your internship to the next year, and then we'll have another look at your application again then, kind of with everyone. So you won't need to reapply if you've already been accepted once. And one more time, here's that newsletter. It really is the best way to keep up to date with all of the information. So the way that this info session is structured is that we'll introduce ourselves and give a brief overview of the English camp. We'll talk a bit about who we are and the partners that we work with. I'll talk about the application process, the interviews, and the onboarding process. So kind of going chronologically, after that, then orientation and training. So when you arrive in Japan. And at that point, we'll break for a quick Q&A. So if you have any questions based off of what we've talked about in that first kind of chunk, that is the time to ask those questions. But as you'll see, we'll also be talking about the actual camp itself. So what happens during the program itself, and logistics and subsidies. So if you have questions regarding money and travel, logistics and subsidies is the best place to just kind of wait, see what I say, and then if you're still not sure, we'll have a Q&A session immediately after that. Then I'll talk a bit about kind of outside of the classroom, and then we'll have a final Q&A, open the floor to everyone who wants to ask any questions. Okay, so with that kind of introduction out of the way, let's get going. So we have this lovely Global English Camp promo. Unfortunately, we don't really have the time for that right now. But if you want to have a look at it, it is in one of the links I provided, the Global English Camp info, first link that I sent in, top of the page, right there. Feel free to enjoy it at your own leisure. So this is an overview of the camp, and a lot of this information is also on the site as well. So what is this Global English Camp? It is a 5-week unpaid internship in Japan. If you're a returning intern, which I think most of you won't be, then it will be a little bit longer than 5 weeks. But for most of you, that is 5 weeks, which includes 1 week of training and then 4 weeks of teaching or mentoring. It's aimed at university students, recent graduates, and PhD students. And we want people of all age ranges as well. So if you are, a first year, a freshman, and you're worried about your application not being strong, don't worry, because we want a good collection of first years as well. And, if you've just graduated from your PhD and you think, oh, am I a bit too old for this program? Not at all. We want people like you as well. And what is the program? Well, it's to provide an opportunity for Japanese students to practice their English speaking skills, to grow their confidence, and to discover their life mission. Those are kind of the 3 main things that we aim to do on the camp. And the way that it works is that after your training week, each week, interns, yourselves, will facilitate themed discussion sessions in a classroom environment with a group of 2 to 6 high school students, though you might end up with a middle school student, or for those of you who have graduated, you might have a university student. And you'll typically be in a classroom of anywhere from 15 people to 100 people. It really depends on which venue you're in. We have some venues like right in the heart of Tokyo, some of our big venues, and we also have venues that go, all the way out to the outskirts of Japan. The program also offers some optional activities throughout the program, both after classes and on the weekends as well. Although this is an unpaid internship, the sponsor provides certain expenses for each intern who participates. So this is something we'll talk a lot more about later on in the info session regarding subsidies, logistics, travel, what do we cover, what do we not cover, and so on. But just to be aware, some things, it's not just what happens inside the classroom, we also provide some things outside of the classroom. The exact dates for the 2021 program have to be decided, and you'll kind of see that cropping up throughout this info session, is that a lot of the things are still in the air, particularly with the COVID scenario and situation. So thank you for your patience regarding all of these details. There's a lot of uncertainty going on, but hopefully, you'll stick with this and hopefully it will bear fruitful. Based on previous year, our dates were 10th of July to 20th of August and 17th July to 27th of August. So our cohort in 2019 was particularly large, and we decided to split everyone into two groups. Group A, which started and finished a bit earlier, for anyone who may have needed to start another job or an internship after the program, or maybe had to go back to university, say in the 25th of August. Or we also had a second group, which started and ended a little bit later, for anyone who wasn't able to commit, say the 15th of July, for instance. This might change in this coming year. It might be two groups, it might be one big cohort again. Who knows, maybe it's even three groups. Things are still a bit undecided. But in general, you should expect that the program is middle July to middle to late August. Numbers. So in 2019, we had a total of 178 interns. We also had 27 returning interns. And of all of the interns together, we were split across 15 teams. And so your team, which you will be a part of, will have 1, 2, maybe even 3 returning interns. So people who will lead your team, who have been on the program, have experienced the program firsthand. And you'll typically be moving within your team, about 10 or 12 people or so, and you'll be sticking with them throughout the program. So throughout most of the venues, you'll see the same kind of dozen or so people in your venues, in your classrooms, and so on. We also work with 25 different universities across the US, UK, Canada, and even outside as well. And we also worked with 57 different venues in Japan. Some of them were in big cities like Tokyo and Osaka and Niigata, and some of them were really out in the outskirts like Kushiro, if anyone's even heard of that, somewhere up northeast in Hokkaido. So here's a little bit about us and who we are. So this program is organized by 3 main companies. The first is Common Out Japan, who is us. We are the program administrator. We organize and sort out the applications that you'll be sending in, the first stage of interviews, the onboarding process, the program retreat, the activities that will be happening outside of the classroom. We are your ground support. We are your primary intern contact in Japan and the US. So we are your first point of call for basically anything. Another big company that's involved is Nagase Brothers or Toshin. They are the program sponsor. And if anyone's familiar with the idea of cram schools in Japan, so this is where students go and do some extra tuition or tutoring classes, Toshin have had 40 years worth of education in running and organizing these cram schools. So they're a very well-known organization. If you go to any kind of random Japanese person and ask about Toshin, they'll probably have heard of them, if not, been involved with some of their cram schools. And as a program sponsor, what they do is that they organize the second stage of interviews. They oversee the daily classes, they construct the curriculum, and they recruit the Japanese high school students. So that's the Japanese, one of the big partnerships that we work with. Another big company that we work with is Common Up, who is also the program sponsor, and they work with a lot of the pastoral side of things. So organizing the housing, providing that, reimbursements for transportation, organizing language classes, organizing some of the activities. Again, they're another source of ground support, they're your emergency contact, and they organize some of the reimbursements as well. So these are kind of 3 of the big partners that help to run this program. So let's run through things chronologically. I feel that's the easiest thing to do, right? So the application phase, which is basically right now. So the first stage, the early phase, ends at the end of November 30th, 1st December, excuse me. And this is really where you want to have your application in. About 75% of successful applicants have come from this early phase. So it really boosts your chances to be submitting your application early on. And what we do is once that November 30th deadline has been hit, we take all the applications and then we look through them all, through the application process, the interviews, and so on. And then we do this in a rolling basis. So you really want your application to be somewhere in that top early phase. Because after that, your chances are decreasing because people have already been accepted in. So that would be the regular phase. And then we also have this waitlist phase as well. So we try to be as flexible as we can with people accepting this internship, particularly because we're aware that a lot of people will be applying to lots of different internships and programs and jobs and so on, which means that we do have quite an extensive waiting list. If you do get put onto this waiting list, there's a possibility you might still be joining with us in September, in the summer of 2021. So here are some frequently asked questions regarding the applications. You do not need to be a native English speaker, but you must be native level. So a lot of people have come from all over the world, China, Singapore, France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and so on and so forth. But as long as your English is native level, and that will you be supported by the application that you send in, if the grammar and vocabulary is all good and coherent, the interviews that we do with you, whether you're able to speak at a fluent level to us face-to-face via Zoom. And if you go to a university in an English-speaking country, then you would be considered native level. You do not need any formal teaching experience, and you do not need to be TEFL certified. So if you're worried about not having been a teacher before or not having a TEFL certificate, don't worry. They do make your application look stronger, but it is not a requirement. We want a vast majority of people. I'll come to that in a second. So you do not need to have visited Japan or speak any Japanese. Again, I think about 75% of interns we've had on the program do not speak a word of Japanese. So don't worry about that. Of course, I found that as someone who spoke a little bit of Japanese, or who speaks a little bit of Japanese, it just makes the whole program a little bit more enjoyable, but it's not a requirement. You also do not need to be a Japanese major or an education major. We really are looking for a wide variety of majors throughout our entire internship. So myself, I have a maths degree. Matt is in film. Elena, remind me.
German and art.
That was on the tip of my tongue, I promise. German and art, right? So we're looking for a wide variety of different majors. We're looking for lots of different types of people. So if these things are not required, what is required? We were looking for people who can show patience, flexibility, maturity, and passion. So this is an intense program. You're in a completely different country. Maybe you haven't been there before. You're surrounded with lots of different people, potentially 100 or 200 interns. You're working in quite a tough environment. You're in the heart. Most of the time, you might be in the heart of Tokyo, a really busy city. So it's very important to have that patience to be able to deal with different situations, to be flexible, because things might happen unexpectedly. Maybe you rock up one day and one of your students is not being very cooperative with you. So you need to also have that flexibility and the maturity to be able to work through the situations in an appropriate manner. But most importantly as well, we're looking for the passion. So where we don't require experience, what we're really looking for is passion to be able to impact and impart on the students. A few more frequently asked questions. So do applications from previous years affect your odds? We did not have the English camp in 2020 summer, so the summer that had just gone. So some applicants have had their application been deferred to this year. So that will affect your odds. It is what it is. Does your GPA matter a lot? So this is a part of the application process. And as a Brit, it doesn't matter a whole lot, to be honest, because we don't have GPAs. So I think I put 0 in there when I applied because I didn't really know what it was. It's mostly just a question of, are you standing well with your university? If you're really struggling with your university degree, then perhaps the internship is not appropriate because maybe you should be focusing on other things instead. What about visas? So because this is an unpaid internship, even though you will have some reimbursements, this means you do not need to apply for a work visa. you can come in on a tourist visa. And if you're from Canada, UK, US, and some other countries as well, you will land and they will provide with you a 90-day visa on arrival. So you do not need to apply beforehand or anything like that. If you have passports from other countries, then I cannot right now guarantee what the situation is, but you'll most likely either have the same situation where you'll just kind of arrive and they provide you your visa, or that's something that we will work individually on a case-to-case basis with you. So I wouldn't worry about visas now until the application process goes a bit further. Here are also a few things that we get asked about a lot, but these are things that you should probably worry about, later. So you have a medical condition, what should you do? You can tell us now, and you can put it as part of your application if you want us to know. This won't affect your application, so we will try to consider everyone as fairly and as equally as possible. But this is something that we'll ask you again later on in the onboarding process. So we provide some health insurance, and so it's really important for us to be aware of any medical conditions that you have. So there is an opportunity later in the process to give us more detail about this. If you have dietary requirements, like being vegan, vegetarian, if you have any allergies, you eat halal or eat kosher, is that okay? Yes, it's perfectly fine, 100%. I eat halal, and I was a little bit concerned about finding halal food in Japan, but I was able to find lots of different resources. There's a great app which is really helpful, and the intern cohort is really great at working together to provide tips and suggestions and say, hey, check out this place, or hey, here's a good way to find this. We really help support people with all different dietary requirements and allergies to be able to manage and make their way through the program. Location preferences. So again, this is something that will happen later on in the onboarding process where we will specifically ask you. So there are a few options. If you want to mostly stay in the Kanto area, so that will mostly be Tokyo and areas around Tokyo. Whether you want to stay in the Kansai area, so that's mostly kind of Osaka and nearby areas like Kyoto, for instance. Whether you really want to travel as much as possible, and whether you're just kind of flexible and you're okay to be, wherever you want, wherever is available. So these are things that, again, don't need to worry about this right now. But it's nice to be aware that later on in the onboarding process, once the application has been successful, these are some things for you to think about as well. I should also note here, if you're interested in doing a homestay, your best bet is to put down that you want to travel as much as possible. Homestays are more common in more remote areas or places so outside of the big city. It's quite uncommon to find homestays in Tokyo, for instance. But that's something that we can talk a bit about later. Another common question that we have, can you request to be in the same team or live with another intern? Again, this is something that you can put into your application, more so later on during the onboarding process. It is quite a difficult thing to organize logistically. There's a lot of interns, lots of different living situations, lots of different shared houses, and some interns might want to live with each other, but one might want to stay in Kanto and another might want to travel a lot. So logistically, it's tough. We'll definitely look at and consider, and we'll do our best, but unfortunately, we cannot guarantee or promise anything. And also, if you're worried about references, don't be. That's something, again, that will happen later on in the process. Reference can usually be done by kind of anyone who's been a supervisor or a tutor in a professional setting or an academic setting. So if you did like a part-time job, then your manager at the time would be suitable. If you're, your personal tutor at university, if you've done a big project, then your supervisor for that project. These are common people who you can ask for the character reference. I'll talk a bit about the orientation and the training from previous years. So as I've mentioned, in this coming year, there's a bit of uncertainty about organizing different events and making sure that everything is safe, particularly with the COVID situation. So I can only share experiences that we've had. So you would come in on the very first weekend and you'd kind of have a moment to check in to a big hostel with kind of everyone around you, either the whole cohort or half the cohort. And you kind of sleep off your jet lag as much as possible. We also have a nice welcome party where we all just kind of get together. and it's really fun. Then you also have disaster training. So Japan has a lot of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, and so on, hurricanes, typhoons. And so we have provided the opportunity to get a bit of training what to do in these scenarios. Thankfully, we haven't had anything particularly serious over the last few years, and hopefully we won't in the future. But this is always something good to have under your belt, some experience and training to know how to deal with these situations. Then in the first week is training. And training is organized and run by previous year's interns. So these are people who have been on the program themselves, parting with you as much knowledge and experience as possible. And what we do is that we work through the curriculum and the textbook, which is organized by the Japanese company, Toshin. So they construct the curriculum, and then we help run you through the program. And this is something that we'll talk a bit about later on in this info session. And so that is kind of the training. And then typically at the end of the training week, we've had a retreat. In particular, we've gone to a place called Hakone, which is quite close to Mount Fuji. And it's a nice place for kind of onsens and hikings and so on. Again, this year, things might be different. So we might have a different style of retreat or something else instead. So that was quite a lot. I've been talking for about almost half an hour, but this is just a moment for a bit of a break. If you've had any questions based off of what I've explained, please feel free to ask them in the chat. Matt and maybe Elena will also help me read out and answer these questions. Still to come, what actually happens during the camp itself, during the 4 weeks of teaching or mentoring, and more questions about, more information about the logistics and subsidies. So if you've really got a question about, how will the camp itself actually be, or flights, or, bursaries and reimbursements, then just hold off on your question for a bit, because we'll come to this in a moment. So, questions?
All right. Well, Zane, you've been doing a great job. And by the way, fortunate for everyone here, because we've been sort of perfecting this in our online session over the past 4 weeks, especially Zane, adding to the FAQ, condensing the presentation from when I first did it and rambled all over the place. So you guys are experiencing the benefits by coming to this later session. I think I've got most of the questions now, but there's a few that just came in. Tiana asked, can students with dependents come on out to Japan? You're a single mother. We've never had that before. In cases like these that we haven't have experienced that before, we work on an individual basis. Tiana, of course, you would have to, while you're at school, figure out a way for your child to be taken care of. And Zane will get into housing later, but you would probably want to do an individual apartment, which is the option to pay a little extra to live alone, so you're comfortable. Because a lot of times you're living with other interns. But Tiana, feel free to reach out to us. We're like I said, we haven't done that before, but we're open to talk. Daniel, if you have, sorry. Let me just get, no worries, sure. No worries. Oh, was that you, Tiana? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was reach out to you like via email. Is your email listed in the email that we got earlier tonight with this Zoom link?
Actually, that is the info, and you can reach out to me as my personal as well. Zane and I usually put that at the end, but I just put it in the chat for you. Matt,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. And just moving down here. So Daniel asks about experience in education, essay format, go into detail. We do limit it to 500 words. And as Zane has said in the past, if you feel you need a little bit extra, go for it, but not too much. Maybe 10%, I think, is what Zane recommends, because we're going to be going through these applications, and we do it thoroughly. It's really important to us, but there's also only a few of us doing this, so we're reading tons of applications, so we prefer the concise answers, Daniel. And where am we? Robbins. Disability accommodation, again, like Zane mentioned, that's in our health and wellness package. So throughout the onboarding process, we go through extensively our different options. That includes health and wellness. And Robbins also, just in general, would be, I think, good to also do some self-research on Japan and accommodations throughout Japan as well. But of course, we will be there to provide help and support. Essay form, point form, or a mix on the answers to your question. It's just short answers, so however you feel you can best convey it to us in under 500 words. I know that's vague, but really that's how it is, and we'll just be reading these, and we enjoy reading these. So we appreciate you keeping it concise and also as unique an individual as possible. Share your experiences, share some anecdotes, share your motivations and intentions for applying. Haley, you asked about deferring the application. The airfare, you know, that is generally the thing that locks you in. And Zane's going to talk about this in a bit too. But just to say, this year is very special, of course, or next summer. So we're not going to have the plane ticket purchase even start unless we feel it is safe to do so. So everything's going to be pushed back and delayed, and that includes the onboarding process and getting the tickets. So don't worry about that. How many applications? 1,200 last year. It's a lot, but like Zane said, apply early. Your chances do statistically go quite a bit up because we accept on a rolling basis. So we get a ton of applications in December, but we're already filling spots. So don't be intimidated by those numbers. A lot of people ask resume and cover letter, you know, will this better your chances? Like Zane said, we don't need a character reference till the onboarding process. You can attach it. You're welcome to. We'll look at it, but the focus for us is the meat of the application and those short answers. That's what we like to read. That's what we like to see. And then of course the interview. Aaron, about hearing back from other internships, of course, we're quite flexible. In years past, we give you time if you're accepted to our program to decide. And this year we're even going to be more flexible, of course, due to the current situation. Taylor, I think I answered your question about the 500 word. Simran, tips, looking for it. Like Zane said, it's a wide variety. That's cliche. Really let your personality shine. That's cliche, but I mean, truly that's the best we can give. And remember what Zane said, patience, flexibility, maturity, and passion. If you can make those 4 things shine, that's what we're looking for. If we read through your application and we don't see any mention of how you want to impact students and how that's the most important driving factor for that, we're probably going to pass it because that's the most important thing for our program. So hopefully that helps. And Elena gave some advice too, really talking about what you care about, your own life mission. And Jackie, how many years? There's no cutoff. We've had interns as old as, I think, 33 was our oldest intern. And we like a wide variety because we think different ages give different life experiences to the students, different perspectives, and for your fellow interns, everyone can learn from each other. And I just ran through these in the case of natural disasters. And Elena just answered it right on time. There we go. Phone notifications. And of course, we'll do training like Zane said as well. All right. I think I burned through them. Hopefully I know more will come in.
As I go through more of the info session, of course, more questions will come up and there'll be more time to ask more questions a bit later as well. For anyone who's worried about your odds through the application, like how many people apply, what are my chances of getting in, things like that. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln that said that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Anyway, I really hope someone else got that and not just Matt.
Yeah.
So, the camp itself. So I briefly showed you the textbook. But I'll go in a little bit more detail about the actual schedule. So as I mentioned, you do 1 week of training and then 4 weeks of teaching or mentoring. Each week will look basically the same. And this is how each week will look like. On the first day, so Monday, I should also say that the hours are typically about 9:30 to 5:30. And this is kind of a standard thing throughout the whole camp. Whether you're teaching, mentoring, or training, these are typically your hours to be expected. The first day is really to get to know each other. So in the morning, you'll receive your small group of students, somewhere between 2 and 6 students. And you'll spend that first time just speaking exercises, getting to know each other, and talking about your university to the students around the classroom. And what's interesting to note is that there's nothing in here that says, grammar 101 or vocabulary 102 or anything like that. This is not a formal teaching experience. So this is all about getting the students to build their confidence, to practice their speaking, and not about teaching them hardcore grammar and vocabulary. At the end of the first day as well, in here, we would speak about the Tokyo Olympics. That probably won't be the case when we run the next English camp, but there will be a lot of different topics in the textbook that you can pick and choose from. So the textbook provides a very strong guide for you to follow, as well as a lot of flexibility as well. So there's lots of options for you to pick and choose from. In the second day, it's thinking about kind of Japan in the bigger world. We start off with some speaking exercises, and then we go into the major or field of study introductions. So this is a big part of the camp of you speaking to the students in small groups about what you study and what your life mission is and what you want to do in the future. And this helps the students to get to see lots of different perspectives and lots of points of views, and makes them think about their own future and what they want to do as well. There's also, towards the end of the second day, a presentation. So the students will work in their groups and present in front of the rest of the classroom a wonderful poster that they've made, and we'll show you some pictures about that in a moment. On the third day, we continue with the same kind of idea. So some more speaking exercises, some more icebreakers. Again, more presentations. So you'll present to different groups, small groups around the classroom about your major and your field of study. And then we also have discussions about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this is a really big part of the program. It's about getting the students to think about the whole world around them and the different problems that need working on and different solutions that they can do. And the fourth day, very similar to kind of the second and third days, you start off with lots of speaking exercises, more major and life mission presentations. And again, the students present their ideas regarding the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to the rest of the class. On day 5, this is really the climax of the whole week. The students have spent the whole week listening to presentations, thinking about what they want to do in the future, and day 5 is really when they practice their presentations, which they'll do solo in front of the whole class, or maybe half the class, fully in English for a few minutes straight. And so they spent the whole week kind of practicing their skills, getting to think about the world, getting to see your presentations about what you do with your future. And this is really where everything kind of culminates to. And then right at the end, we have this nice little closing ceremony as well. So here are some of the pictures, lots of speaking exercises and some games. So as I mentioned, it's not teaching in front of a chalkboard, going through drills. It's really about getting out of your seat, playing some games, having some fun, just getting that energy going. We had the Olympics discussions in previous years. In future years, it might be slightly different topics, but the students work on a lovely poster together, and they each get a chance to have a few minutes to talk in front of everyone with the rest of their group as well. Similarly, some of the other options that I've mentioned would be like an entrepreneurship discussion. So one group in previous years has decided to make a microwave bento box named Mike. And they came up with different sizes and how much they would cost. So 3,000 yen for the small size, 5,000 yen for the large size, and so on. And as well as a domination switch, which turns off your annoying siblings. So it's amazing to see all the different ideas and different fun stuff that the students come up with. So there's lots of flexibility in the program. Again, as I mentioned, world issues is a really big part of the program. And it's really quite amazing seeing these, mostly high school aged Japanese students thinking about big issues around the world. And you can see from these pictures, they're talking about gender, energy, education, poverty, and so on. And you get some really amazing discussions going on. And of course, they present to the rest of the class as well. And on the final day is their life mission speech. You see them, they go up on their own in front of everyone. Some of them will have memorized their speech. Some of them will be talking to a microphone. Some will just go, on their own, full voice. And it's really an opportunity for students to showcase their interest and their talents. So an anecdote from my own personal experience. In my third week, in my first year, I had one girl who really wanted to be a doctor, but she also really loved music. And those are two big passions of hers. So for half of her life mission speech, she talked about being a doctor. And for another half of her speech, she brought out her acoustic guitar and played a song for all of us. And it's still, I had that video on my phone. It brings back really good memories. And so after this life mission presentations is the closing ceremony. And this is just a really nice way to cap off the week. If you know any Japanese, this is the only time where you're allowed to speak Japanese to the students, so that the students don't try to use it as a crutch throughout the week. And if you know Japanese, it's a great way to kind of show them off to your students because they won't expect it at all. And if you don't know any Japanese, it's also a great way for the students to see you struggle with the language as well and see you making mistakes and talking in terrible grammar and awful vocabulary. So it's a really nice situation all around. So I think if Matt or Elena, if you'd like to just kind of talk about anecdotes through the week. You also get like little gifts or messages from your students as well.
Yeah, a couple fun anecdotes. You know, this is like I said earlier, this is the day where I realized how fulfilling this program is. And you know, one example to go off Zane, for my student's life mission, he was actually a college student, and in Japan, most colleges unlike the States at least, you start with a major, and if you want to change, you got to start all over. He was an economics major, had a life mission in terms of international business, but throughout the week he kept asking me questions about education, being a teacher, and we stayed at lunch and talked, and we still stay in touch. And he actually ended up changing his major to education. He had a big life mission speech about how he changed his mind in the week, and he's happier ever since and very fulfilled. So this is, like Zane said, it's really a mentorship, not just teaching English, not just building confidence in English, but mentorship. And then a fun story for this ending. You often get gifts. I don't have any of my gifts right next to me right now besides one of my message cards, but a funny story of gifts is one student wore the English camp t-shirt that our Zane and Elena are wearing. And he wore the t-shirt the entire week. And his students thought, wow, this guy must not have other t-shirts. And they all bought him a new t-shirt. So he had 5 new t-shirts to wear during his next week of teaching. And so it's really, this last day is so special, tangible, getting these gifts or just talking with your students and hearing what their thoughts are on the program is what makes it really, really rewarding. I don't know if Elena had anything to share.
Yeah, I was just going to add in, my big thing is, as an art student, very often all the students would be very precise on when they drew their posters, being very slow, drawing everything out in pencil, and then before doing it in marker. Usually you don't have enough time for that. But also there's a lot of fun in the freedom and the messiness. And so my favorite parts were always getting my students' letters, and they would just be, I would make everyone draw Peppa Pig, and they would just be colorful and messy and clearly filled with a lot of like time. I had one student draw me, I think this is Phantom Prince? Kid the Phantom Thief. There we go.
Yes.
And so it's just really wonderful to know that when they spent this time at home and outside of the camp, and to kind of like feel that through what they wanted to show you or the places they wanted you to eat at. I had one student who printed off a list of, I would ask them every day, like, where should I eat today? She printed off a list on Google, circled it, each of the places I should go, and then recommended a dish at each place, which was just, it was mind-blowing. It was so exciting and so, yeah, wonderful to pour your heart and pour your passion into students for a week and feel that returned.
Yeah, thank you both very much.
Elena, I got to mention, I did not know that gift you got of the food, and Zane and I are probably both salivating now because that would be the best gift for us to get the food recommendations. Amazing.
I think it was from Sendai, where the earthquake was, and I think I still have the printed off list in one of my other boxes full of my come on out stuff.
Okay, thank you both very much. So I guess I'll just continue with some of the information from the session. So here is the logistics and the money stuff. So hopefully this is where most of your questions will be answered. So what was included last year? So again, as I've been saying, a lot of things are a bit up in the air still. A lot of figures and numbers and lots of these things are still to be confirmed, but I can tell you about what's happened previously. So a round trip airfare with limitations and procedures. So, we're given some budget, and provided that your ticket does not go above the budget, we'll pay for your ticket. If it does go above the budget, you'll pay the difference. and it's a reasonable budget. So for instance, I took a direct return flight from London to Tokyo, and then I only went like £30 above the budget. And I, so there's some reasonable amount that we should have for this. Because our sponsors want to encourage travel within Japan, if you are interested in flying to and from a place which is not your home country or not where your, sorry, let me say that again. If it's not from your home city or where your university is, then the budget is a bit lowered. But these are kind of details and logistics which are a bit more cleared up later in the process once the numbers have been finalized. We also asked for a $500, or we have asked for a $500 deposit at the time that you purchase your ticket. $100 of that is for the onboarding fee. So this covers pre-training, vetting, background checks, and so on. And then 45 days after the completion of the program, you then receive hopefully all $400 of that deposit, unless you've like wrecked your room or something like that. So yeah, there's guarantees hopefully that you don't just come to Japan and then run away or something like that, because then otherwise, we keep that $400. We also provide housing for the duration of the program. Typically, this will be in shared housing. So you'll have your own room, but then you'll share amenities. So kitchens, bathroom, toilets, and so on. And this will be where most of you will probably be staying. We also have some dorm rooms available, and some of you will be in homestays. Typically, that will be if you are going to a slightly more remote area where we don't have a shared house, or maybe there aren't hotels nearby, and so on. So we also do have apartments, hotels, and guest houses which may be utilized, but most commonly it will be shared house, maybe homestays. A few things to note: if you plan to arrive before the program starts, and if you want to leave after the program ends, we cannot provide paid housing for that, but you can request some housing, and we may be able to organize a fee for that. Or if you want to stay in your own hotel before the program starts and after the program ends. If you're interested in homestays, your best bet, I think, as I've mentioned, is to try to travel as much around the Japan as you can. It's difficult to find homestays within the big cities like Tokyo and Osaka. Personal anecdote: I had a homestay for one of my weeks in the second year. It was in kind of the middle of nowhere, Kushiro, up in Hokkaido, and it was a really wonderful experience. So my host mom made me bento lunch every day. I'd come home and I'd play Smash Brothers with the kids. At the end of the week, we went out for a nice big sushi restaurant, and it was just a really good time. It was really enjoyable. We also have an additional fee required for anyone who wants to specifically be in their own individual apartments. So that's on the housing side. We also have weekly food subsidies. Again, in previous years, this has been about 2,300 yen per weekday. And you might think, is that enough? Actually, it's really quite accessible. So Japan is not as expensive for food as you might think, especially when it comes to things like convenience stores, which, promise, they're much better than it sounds. Convenience stores in the US and in the UK have a bit of a bad rap. In Japan, they're real good. They're real convenient, you might say. And some people can really keep a really tight budget and make sure that they don't spend a single yen more than what they're subsidized for. But some people, like myself and Matt in particular, we love to eat. So we love to splurge out on some extra food. So, we might bring an extra, say, few $100 or pounds just to kind of really splash out a little bit throughout the week. You will also be reimbursed for your transportation to and from the class, as well as to and from the venues. So if you are taking a flight from Tokyo to Niigata, then you don't have to worry about the cost of that flight, because that's something that we would pay for. We also have a few optional field trips, as we mentioned, or program retreats, some Japanese language classes, and after-class activities as well. Again, the details of this are still to be confirmed about how many programs or which ones will be provided for, which ones won't be. But typically, we help to reimburse some of these activities. Some of them you'll just have to pay out of pocket. But also there's lots of different activities that you can do, on a $0 budget. So there's lots of free museums, lots of open parks, and so on and so forth. Google really is your best friend, especially when it comes to doing things in Japan. And of course, we also have the health and accident insurance, counseling, and support. This is also really dependent on making sure that your health and wellness forms are sufficiently filled out so that we are aware of everything medical related. But that's more later on in the onboarding process. So hopefully all of that was clear. If not, this is the great time for Q&A. So any questions regarding money, logistics, travel, subsidies, any of these things, bring on.
All right. I was fastest hands in the West. I was trying to type. Here we are. Kara asked, I think, Zane, you might have mentioned a bit. Do you guys have a recommendation on how much money we should have prepared for the trip? Do Zane and Elena want to answer your guys' experiences?
I don't want to admit anything. I stayed an extra 3 weeks, and so we're just not going to think about how much money I spent. But the truth was, for a trip to Japan and for being in Japan for 3 extra weeks afterwards, I think that being able to understand the working relationship in the city, especially in Tokyo, was a price-worthy experience. Price-worthy?
Yeah.
It's late. Words are leaving me.
I usually say to have at least $200, even though many interns have had a lot less that have been budget conscious. But I'm maybe like Elena, maybe Zane too. I will spend a lot on major food while I'm there just to experience everything. But the real thing for me that builds up is the weekend trips on your own. So we have, some program sponsor stuff throughout, but most of outside of the classroom, you're on your own to explore. And if you're in Tokyo for 5 weeks, you're probably going to want to spend a weekend in Kyoto. And that means you're going to get a Shinkansen, a bullet train down to Kyoto, get housing if you're staying with other interns, or even if you're staying in Tokyo for the weekend. There's lots of free stuff, lots of matsuri, summer festivals, things like that. But you're also going to be traveling around, and transportation can build up within Tokyo on the weekend. So that's, my recommendation. Zane, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, basically, as you said it, Matt, I'm the kind of person that will just always try to bring a bit too much money because I know I'm going to spend it.
Yeah. Souvenirs too, right? So it's just, there's always something that comes up. Free time, Evelyn. So yeah, like Zane said, at 9:30 to 5:30 Monday through Friday. Outside of that is free, except for if you're traveling to another school venue, that will be like Sunday travel day. So you might take a bullet train in Tokyo to Osaka because you're teaching there next week, or a plane to Hokkaido. Robin's Japanese language classes. Yeah, in years past, we'd have 3 or 4 different levels. So you're intermediate, advanced. We have an advanced, and the advanced class is usually conversational based. So we have a lot of native speakers, staff that come in, and that's super fun. We've had professors do the beginning too.
And in particular, the Japanese language classes are really based in Tokyo, possibly Osaka as well.
Osaka.
But so if you really want to travel all over Japan, then your language class is the country.
And the staff, especially if you're at a smaller venue and you don't do you don't pop on Zoom to do a language class or something. The staff at the smaller venues, one benefit is it's really intimate, and they'll want to show you around. Of course, there's no guarantees, but in all experiences, and me being at smaller venues and other interns, it's a really special experience in that regard. Okay, we got a lot here. So deposit, if once plane ticket starts, as Zane mentioned, you get your ticket, you work with the travel agency to pick your ticket that you want. Then once we approve it, you pay the $500 deposit, we pay the rest or whatever is covered in our limit. And pay the deposit directly to the travel agency, and then within 45 days, 400 of that comes back. 2,300 yen per weekday. Yep, 2,300 yen each day for 5 days. So 11,500 yen for the week.
You cut out a little bit, Matt. I'm not sure exactly where, but somewhere in that speed zone.
2,300 yen per day is the food reimbursement. Hopefully I got everything else. Field trips. So Zane's going to go over some pictures with past field trips. So we'll get to that. Ben, the weather is really hot and humid. A small price to pay to enjoy the incredible sights of Japan. Let's see. Yeah, cost. Yep, Diego. Yep. So that's cost is covered by the paid by us through the travel agency. So you just pay the deposit to the travel agency. And then extending the stay, and you want to request for housing. So yeah, you actually can request with us to stay in our share houses, our partner company's share houses before the program, at a pretty cheap rate. You could, Echo, you can request it any time. It's just not sure if we'll have availability. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I think I read the other ones are comments. So I think yes, Anissa, financial logistics. Like Zane said, so much comes in the onboarding. The onboarding is huge. We send you, it's probably too much information. We're sending you packages, information, forms to fill out throughout the process. Want everyone to be prepared. Andrew, universities that interns come from. So, I mean, Zane went to ICL in London, Imperial College. Lane and I went to UCLA, but it's not just states in the UK, Canadian, across the world. Massive list. We have a list on the website of where interns have been from in the past, and we're constantly adding to that list.
Okay, just because of time, I'm just going to try really. I'm aware we're hitting to the hour, so I'll really try and zip through these next sections. Any questions that were still in the chat, we'll get to that just after this. Yes. So here are some examples of some of the cultural experiences and activities that we have. So in the summer, there's lots of festivals going on. You can visit an onsen or a hot spring. We also run some cooking classes, as I've mentioned. And one of the pictures here, the last one, is from the retreat that we've had in previous years to Hakone. Some other examples, tea ceremony, calligraphy classes, boat trips, hiking. There's so much to do that you can do in Japan. Another big thing that we do is language classes and cultural exchanges. So we typically have one with Tokyo University. And this is really just a great opportunity to meet other university students from Japan, because they also really want to meet you as well. This is what some of the classrooms have looked like. So you get to see an idea of the sizes, the number of students, the number of interns, a slightly smaller group in the top picture and a slightly larger group in the bottom picture. The intern teams in 2015, real small cohort. See if you can recognize one of the handsome men there. This was in 2015 with 11 people. In 2016, it grew to about 48 or so people. I'll double check my counting some other time. In 2017, we grew quite a bit more, enough I couldn't be bothered to count. And we kept growing in 2018 as well. See if you can spot me real quick before I change the slides. And then after 2018, we had the split into Group A and Group B. So our two cohorts there. In 2020, we did not run the program due to COVID. But in 2021, hopefully you'll be with us. And if you enjoy the program as much as myself, Elena, or Matt, you can also return as well. And the returning interns are a really big part of helping to organize, helping to run, helping to train all of the interns as well. So it's kind of the people who have been on the programs are the ones that make big contributions to helping the program. So coming up to that last slide, visit the main website to apply. You might be able to scroll right to the top of the chat history and see all the different links that I put there. Check out the Twitter if you want to have any other questions. I'm going to put my email into the chat again, and I'll probably do that later on again. Matt is the same email, but with Matt, not the same. And just before we finish off, what should you do now? You should apply as soon as you can. The deadline is the 30th of November, but really just do it now. Just do it right now, end of the meeting, submit your application, get it over and done with. No need to wait, no need to hold it off, no need to procrastinate, just do it right now. And thank you all for listening to me talk for like an hour. apply now.
Yeah, and we'll stick around for any questions for just a little bit, even though it's 3 a.m. for Zane. And I also do like to say this at the end, Zane and Elena and all the interns that come back every year, that's really the backbone of the program. We work together to fix the curriculum. We work together to lead the training. Zane was one of the leaders of training last summer. You know, this is built on interns, and the returning group is so special and a really strong community. So thanks again for Zane to doing the presentation, Elena being here. And we'll stick around for 5 minutes for any questions. Feel free to unmute and ask or type it in the chat, but thank you.
Hi, I'm Sydney, and I just have a quick question that, like, if, for example, worst case scenario next year, COVID, the situation prevents us from going. So will we still be secured a spot for 2022 potentially, or if we are accepted for next year?
Yes, so if you are accepted for this coming summer, and then of course the program does not run, then you do not need to reapply. But we will look at your application again, just kind of with all of the other new applicants as well. So just kind of, we might re-interview you or something along the lines of that. So you're not guaranteed an automatic place, but you know, we'll check up on you. That answers your question?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and to add, Zane answered it perfectly. And to add, you know, we like we said, this next year is uncertain. The year after that could be as uncertain. We don't know, and we don't know how big the program will be too. You know, so that's the other thing. Thanks for the question. Sana, yeah, February for acceptance is a rough estimate. However, we haven't, as you probably saw on the website, and Zane showed the slide, you'll be notified by January 15th, you know, if you apply 45 days. It's just because everything is delayed. Usually we can notify the first batch in January, but we haven't put up that specific date because we're just going to have to keep in touch and wait to hear from our sponsors, because they, in Japan, they have to interview you as well. So everything's just going to be slightly pushed back. And so I will say, of course, thank you very much for your patience and understanding in that too in advance. Yes, Dennis, rolling basis applications, like Zane said, we consider everyone in the same group, November 30th, that get it in, but we read the applications down the line in order. Tanegashima Island included somewhere. I don't know, Diego, maybe we can get that in the future. I haven't been there. I don't know if Zane or Elena have been there.
I hope it is.
Yeah, let's look into it. Yeah, Sana, that's a difficult question for us to answer about COVID and guidelines for keeping interns safe. Of course, we're going to, you know, everything will change this summer in terms of safety measures if it happens, and that will include housing, and that will include spacing and keeping interns in different places. That's why I said to Sydney, you know, maybe we're going to have less interns because of that. So yeah, I appreciate your patience on that too. Someone just asked if there'd be 1 or 2 interviews. There'll be 2. So 1 could be with one of us here, the first one, and then if you pass that, then you'll interview with the team in Japan. Ben, I believe it currently does have a ban on USA right now at this instance, but hopefully that will change. I can't comment on if it will continue. We'll have to see how these vaccines and everything goes, and if people start wearing masks too. We just have to wait and check CDC, WHO, Ministry of Health in Japan, embassies, all of our respective country health departments. We'll just have to keep updated. And that is just to say it, as Zane mentioned, what we're doing with COVID. It's good for y'all to keep updated as well. We'll try to update you through the newsletter, as Zane said, and in our website we have a COVID page. But it's always good to just, especially if you're considering this program or others abroad, since many of these kind of programs are in the same state, to just keep updated. Things are going to constantly be changing.
Yes, unfortunately, basically any question relating to COVID is a big kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know. You can only just hope that the situation gets better.
Exactly. We're not going to beat around the bush. We'll be honest. It's uncertain, but we're still doing these things and still recruiting, because if it does, we got to have a great team ready. Sana, I'm going to go full cliche answer. It's varied in terms of applicants. As Zane said, it's really just a wide variety. And again, that's why Zane has been emphasizing the importance of applying right now. And Wiley, do you have friends you've made in Japan still? Yes, we all can say that very much so. Whether it's staff, university students, fellow interns, like, yeah.
Something I find just so interesting about the program is how many people and how many interns come back. And I think for me, that told me everything that I needed to know about it in terms of before I applied. And then here I am doing the same thing as everyone else, just coming back because it's such a great and welcoming group. And you kind of have a trust if people are doing this whole crazy journey with you, that they have similar passions and similar goals.
Yep, just some more questions from the chat. So grooming tools on airplanes and airports, such as trimmers and razors. I think as long as it's inside your suitcase, then there shouldn't really be any problem. Hopefully that you can keep that in your suitcase, and you won't need to have it in your carry-on, because I'm not too sure about the rules there in particular. And a really big question, what was the most meaningful part of your experience, and how has it impacted you after the program? I mean, I guess I'm currently employed by Common Out, right? This is my job that I'm doing right now. So that's pretty impactful, I think.
Yeah, both Zane and Elena were working behind the scenes. We had a meeting today, creating exciting new programs and opportunities for Coming Out. This is special. But again, for me, I'm just going to say it as a reminder, the big thing for all of us, the teaching, the impact on the students every week. And when we're reading that application, that's what we want to see. That is so important. And that it reminds me every summer how special it is to be in a classroom with students, and like Elena said, with like-minded people that want to do the same thing. Sana, the dates. Oh, sorry, Zane, if you're about to answer it, but yep, the dates are completely tentative. Usually we reach them in springtime, but I imagine it'll be delayed this year. Even if it wasn't COVID, we have to wait until the Japanese schools set their summer schedule to get the most efficient dates to cover the most of their summer break, because it's limited. So that's also why it's last minute no matter what. Annie, I'll answer this one. Hakone available. So in the past, we've gone to Hakone on the Friday of training as a celebration of finishing training before the first week. And every intern, regardless of where you're placed, goes, because training is Tokyo for everyone. That's the time when you're all together, the only time. And then otherwise, as Zane was showing pictures, cultural activities happen throughout the venues separately. And Christopher, TEFL certificate. Yeah, as Zane said, it's not required at all. It's definitely not. A few of our interns have it every year, and it becomes more and more every year as TEFL gets popular. But of course, it's an asset in terms of it shows that you're really passionate about ESL. But it is definitely not required, and it's not like every intern we accept has a TEFL certificate. Sana, we don't have a list of the cities online right now. We'll get that up as we get closer to the dates. But Fukuoka has been offered the last few years, so if we have the camp, should be back. Good ramen down there.
We'll probably be closing in about 3 minutes or so, so at 1:15.
Yeah.
So, feel free to, if you have other commitments, you don't have to stay here for the whole thing.
Or if it's 3:12 in the morning in UK, you want to go to sleep.
3:12 in the morning.
Oh, you're getting some shout outs, Zane.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we usually stay till 15 after, so 2 more minutes. Ooh, Eric's got a big question. Approaching a student as a foreigner. Do you guys want to say anything? We go over it in training.
The biggest thing I'll say is that if the student is already in the camp, they have done their level of preparation for the experience, and so you're not scaring them out of nowhere. They are excited to meet and connect with the foreigners as much as you are excited to connect with the Japanese students.
Absolutely, yes. And as Elena mentioned, Training Week has a lot of these kinds of things. So some of the different ways you can approach different topics, some of the ways you can really encourage the students to get out of their shells, and so on. So in terms of the English level of the students on the camp, so the Japanese students, it will differ within venues and from venue to venue as well. So I believe the Japanese students do have some level of proficiency, but a lot of that will depend, especially in Japan, the system is heavily based on reading and writing, less so on kind of speaking and listening. In kind of the big cities like Tokyo, you're more likely to run into someone with a more proficient English skills. In some of the other more remote areas, their English levels might not be as high. But typically within your own group of students, the kind of 2 to 7 that you might have, they'll be roughly the same level of English as well. So there's nothing too worried too much about, trying to keep the top level fine and keeping the lower level as well. Thank you, Ben.
With Zane's sleep schedule in mind, oh, we got one more question. Oh, that's a good question, Eric.
I'm going to give you a real cheesy answer and say no, because they're always all my favorites. It's 3:15 in the morning. I can get away with this.
Yeah, we'll give him one. We go over this in training too, Eric. All right, last question of the countdown.
Last one in.
Last one.
Um,
Go ahead, Zane.
So just really be sure to show your passions and some of the experiences that you've had. So, I'll repeat there's 4 qualities that we really like to see: patience, flexibility, maturity, and passion. So just make sure that really stands through your application, and you should be fine.
Yeah, I'll add it too. It's our special. By attending the info session, you get these insider looks. If Zane and I or Elena were reading an application, and we scroll through and we say there's no mention of impacting the students, then we unfortunately toss it out. So that's a thing to be careful of. And by you, the 35 of you staying up and staying in this info session until the end, I imagine that's not going to be a problem if you're sticking around for our questions. So thanks. Any last words, Elena?
Apply.
Any last words, Zane?
Yeah, I usually do this at the end of every info session, but just do it, right? Just apply right now. The session's about to end. Just open up that application, put it through. No need to delay it. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait until the 30th. Just do it right now. Just get it over and done with. Get to that top of that pile. Just apply like right now.
And that's how we end it. So thank you all very much. Of course, reach out to us via email if you have any more questions. And looking forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the recording.